The November 16th, 2015 meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Ansello? Here. Mr. Daniele? Here. Mr. Flagler Mitchell? Here. Chairman Howland?
Here.
Mr. John Lightfoot? Here.
Welcome to the Monroe County Planning and Economic Development Committee public hearing regarding the modifications and continuation of the Eastern Agricultural District located in the town of Brighton, Webster, Penfield, Pittsford, Perrington, Mendon, Henrietta, and Rush. I hope you've signed in at the door. If not, please do so before you leave. The November 16th public hearing before the Monroe County Planning and Economic Development Committee will come to order. Will the clerk please note the attendance? Article 25AA of the New York State Agriculture and Markets Law allows the county legislator to create agricultural districts. The law then requires the legislature to review each district 8 years after its creation and every 8 years thereafter to see if it's achieving its intended purpose, which is to help conserve and encourage the use of agricultural land for the production of agricultural products. A public hearing must be held prior to the legislator resolving to add parcels to or remove parcels from agricultural districts during the 8-year review. The purpose of this public hearing is to give the public an opportunity to comment on the Eastern Agricultural District.
A mailing regarding this public hearing was sent to supervisors, clerks, and landowners of the affected towns and the Commissioner of Agriculture and Markets on November 9th, 2015. Affidavits of publication and posting of hearing notice in the Rochester Business Journal and Daily Record on October 23rd, 2015 have been received and are on file in the clerk's office.
Following the public hearing, the Planning and Economic Development Committee will take action and make recommendations to the Monroe County Legislature for action at the December 8th, 2015 meeting. We will now hear public comments regarding the proposed modifications to the Eastern Agricultural District from the audience. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the committee on this subject? Seeing no one, I declare this public hearing closed. As stated previously, the Planning and Economic Development Committee will take action on the matter, and it will come before the full legislature at the December 8th, 2015 meeting. Following its adoption, a report and revised district map will be submitted to the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets for certification. Is there anyone signed up for the public forum for this evening?
There is not.
Is there anyone who is not signed up to speak who would like to address the committee at this time? Seeing none, we'll move to the approval of the minutes. The next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. You will should have the September 29th, 2015 minutes before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. Our next item on the agenda is a presentation by Robert Franklin, Chief Financial Officer, who is here to present the 2015 proposed Monroe County budget as it pertains to the Planning and Economic Development Committee.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the 2016 budget presentation related to the Planning and Development Committee. Just to give you a broader context of the overall budget, our total budget proposed for 2016 is about $1.174 billion, and that represents a decrease of about $7.9 million from the 2015 adopted budget. The operating portion of our budget, the largest portion is proposed to be $999.2 million, and that is about $5 million lower than, again, the current year's adopted budget. The overall county budget maintains a tax rate of $8.99 per $1,000 of full value. It reduces headcount by 3.75 full-time equivalents. It reduces mandated spending by about $5 million and complies with the Taxpayer Protection Act of 2007. And since the issue arises from time to time, I would like to note that there were no changes to what we consider mandated services. Last year, there was an inclusion of 911 and medical insurance. No changes like that this year. The definition has not changed. The area of the budget most important to this committee, Planning and Development, while perhaps small within the overall context of the budget, is nonetheless an important role for Monroe County. These are the areas that really are important to planning and development, essentially helping our local businesses retain jobs and create new jobs, helping people find jobs or even train for new jobs, planning how best we can use or conserve our land resources, and helping build a better community for Monroe County. The work of our Planning and Development Office is not done in a vacuum. It is done with our area local municipalities and agencies such as the Finger Lakes Genesee Regional Planning Council, Greater Rochester Enterprise, Rochester Works, and even Comida, to name a few. I put up this slide last year for you, those of you who are new. Here's a slide that shows how planning and development actually does the things that they care about. In economic development, they work with local businesses through incentive programs. In workforce development, helping our residents find or train for new jobs. They identify current and future employment opportunities. They actually work with local businesses. Regarding planning of how best to use or preserve our land resources, they have a whole host of tools at their disposal and a whole set of advice sets that they give local municipalities. And in community development, how they help build a better community, they actually run housing rehabilitation programs, and they have public works projects that they initiate with local municipalities. Overall, the planning and development budget for 2016 in terms of total appropriations just exceeds $2.1 million. Not a lot of change from 2015 amended budget. Revenues are just over $1.3 million, requiring a net county support of a little more than $836,000. In terms of planning and development divisions, planning services and economic development, this is where your real property tax dollars are going to go. Community development and workforce development, they have revenue streams to offset their appropriations. Just to give you a flavor of their revenues, I mentioned property tax. It's almost 40% of planning and development's overall budget. The next largest area is their community development block grant that would fully fund their community development division. But they also get funding through Comida and the Monroe County Industrial Development Council, Rochester Works, and a small amount from other grant contributions. Mr. Chairman, one more slide, Mr. Chairman. These are some highlights you'll see from the 2016 proposed budget. They're not, I picked these kind of like last year. It's not the type of things they do that normally comes before this body, so I wanted to pick them. They actually work on improving fishing sporting. They have marketing efforts regarding the foreign train zone, something I learned last year. And they actually have a subsidy program where they help first-time home buyers acquire their first home. Now that, Mr. Chairman, concludes my remarks for the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. I will now open the floor to any committee members who have questions regarding the planning and economic development portion of the budget. Legislator Ansello.
Thank you. Through the chair, on page 211, under the Planning Services subheading, could you please explain why there's a funding decrease of about $36,000? Through the chair.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, this is the Planning Services Division, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you get a really good flavor of the changes in each division for planning and services. I guess I would point the committee to the next page, 212. It gives an overview of the different changes in planning services. The change on page 211 is best comprised of a slight reduction in personnel services. They have a couple staff that are actually working fewer hours. They also have a small amount available for employee step increases, those employees who are not yet at the top of their pay grade. They have a little bit of a change in their supplies and materials that mostly reflects some new equipment that they're purchasing.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Legislator Flagler Mitchell.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. On page 65 and 209, why is the allocations of hotel motel tax money to Visit Rochester increasing?
Mr. Chairman, the increase of hotel tax to Visit Rochester really reflects a change in our allocations. Essentially, the Greater Rochester Sports Authority, Monroe County Sports Commission used to receive an allocation, approximately $477,500. Rather than allocate funding to the Sports Commission, those dollars are being redirected to Visit Rochester. We had a discussion with Visit Rochester's board and the Sports Commission board. Essentially, Mr. Chairman, the roles and responsibilities that the Sports Commission has been fulfilling over the years will continue to be fulfilled, but under the umbrella of Visit Rochester.
Legislator Flagler Mitchell.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So is Visit Rochester going to take over the small sports grant funding?
I'm not sure I understand that question, Mr. Chairman, the smaller sports grant funding.
So through you, Chair, let me ask again. Is Visit Rochester going to take over the small sports grant funding formerly done by the Sports Development Corporation?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that is correct. The Sports Commission will remain, so to speak, as an advisory board under Visit Rochester, but again, Visit Rochester will have the ultimate authority for that.
Okay, and through you, Chair. So is the real increase for Visit Rochester going to be $50,000?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions? Legislator Daniele.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the administration. On page, I'm looking at page 214, 215, and 216, and I'm looking at performance measures. And I I guess on 214, the question's the same on all three, but when we're looking at things like business contacted through outreach, jobs impacted, it seems like there's a pretty dramatic decrease from 2014 actuals to, in this case, estimated 2015 and 16. Is there a specific reason that we would anticipate such a decline?
Through the chair, as you can imagine, we react obviously to the interests of the business community in the number of programs that we offer. And of course, most of their motivation comes from how they're doing economically and their interest in expanding their business activities. So it's somewhat difficult to project these, but obviously we do track the contacts and the incentives that we give to various businesses, but overall the numbers do have somewhat of a downward trend to them.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, to the administration, on the next page, 215, similar question, and this area specifically community development. We're looking at housing rehabilitation projects and affordable apartments under construction. And I guess my question is there a trend in development downtown that's causing these numbers to look so dramatically, or estimated to be so dramatically less?
Through the chair, this is the affordable housing number?
Correct.
Yes. Well, again, that's a reflection of what that housing sector is looking for in the way of projects. And again, based on our recent experience, that's heading downward.
And through the chair, do we typically estimate low and then if more calls come in, or is this pretty representative of what you'd expect?
Through the chair, we tend to be conservative about those estimates. So yes, they could be low.
Thank you.
Legislator Lightfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd first like to thank Mr. Franklin and his team for putting together our budget and for all their efforts. For now, thank you very much. To you, Mr. Chairman, the 2015 budget objectives for the Economic Development Division on page 213 of the 2015 budget include both increased awareness of all economic development programs through presentations to accountants, attorneys, bankers, and civics groups, and increase marketing efforts for the Monroe County Foreign Trade Zone, which you kind of talked about on the slide, through an improved collaboration with the International Business Council and trade operators. So neither of these objectives were referenced under the 2015 accomplishments on page 209. Were these objectives met? Would you like for me to say it again?
Through the chair, I guess I lost the track of your question a little bit in terms of...
Legislator Lightfoot, please repeat the question.
Thank you, sir. Through you, Mr. Chairman, the 2015 objectives for the Economic Development Division on page 213 of the 2015 budget include both two things: increased awareness of all economic development programs through presentations to accountants, attorneys, bankers, and civic groups, and increased marketing efforts for the Monroe County Foreign Trade Zone through improved collaborations with the International Business Council and trade operators. However, neither of these objectives were referenced under the 2015 accomplishments. On the 2015 accomplishments on page 209, were these objectives met?
Through the chair, we did undertake those activities. We did not quantify them to the extent that we could report them as a number in the accomplishments section of the budget. So, yes, we did perform those. We didn't account for them.
Thank you.
Legislator Lightfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak. Something along the same lines are the 2015 objectives for the Community Development Division. Page 214 of the 2015 budget. They include provide first-time home buyers subsidies to 30 program participants to enable them to purchase their first homes. We all have kind of heard of this program before. The 2015 accomplishments on page 209 of the 2016 budget states 13 families received down payments or closing cost assistance. So my question is, to you, Mr. Chairman, why did the Community Development Division achieve less than 50% of its 2015 objectives of us, helping 30 families?
Through the chair, again, the estimates that we make are just that, estimates based on past trends for any of our programs, and we report accurately on our accomplishments for that year. So it simply is the difference between an estimate and an actual.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, do we put dollar amounts to these estimates? Do we set aside a certain amount of funding for 30 down payment helps, or no? Do you, Mr. Chairman?
Through the chair, the amount is about $5,000 each, but it can vary from application to application.
Any further questions?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I'm not quite done with that. So through you, Mr. Chairman, if we set aside, and this is just a small amount, if we set aside $5,000 for 30 people as an estimate, but we only meet half the goal, what do we do with those excess funds? Or are there excess dollars that go back into the budget or something along that through you, Mr. Chairman?
Again, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I didn't catch the thread of that question.
So, thank you.
Please repeat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as we said, if about $5,000 is set aside for each subsidy that we may want to give, just a rough estimate, and we estimate 30 families, that would be $150,000 set aside. However, if we do not meet that estimated goal of 30 families and only meet half of that, 50%, which means that $75,000 would be left in the kitty. However, where does those dollars go if they're not used for the other 15 families that did not take advantage of the subsidy?
Through the chairman, the math does not work exactly that way. As I mentioned, we respond to the number of applications we get. If we do not use the allocated funds, those are reallocated to the next year's program. So whoever is eligible and applies does get the subsidy. But obviously, if there aren't enough applications to use the available funds, we do have the rollover option.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Legislator Flagler Mitchell.
Yes, I have a question about the Sports Development Corporation and the Sports Commission. Will they be abolished now that Visit Rochester is going to take over?
Through the chairman, the board will continue, as the finance director indicated, as an advisory body to the Visitors Association. But the primary functions of promoting and sponsoring sports activities will continue.
Any further questions? Legislator Lightfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I found it was decided to add the Cornell Cooperative Extension, Strong National Museum of Play, and the Susan B. Anthony House as funded authorized agencies to receive funding. How is that decided? Is there a process through you, Mr. Chairman? What page is that? Do you know?
Mr. Chairman, those allocations that you'll find in this year's budget book are the result of conversations different agencies have had with our administration. And of all those conversations, these are the final entities that ultimately received a proposed allocation.
Thank you so much.
Any further questions? There being none, Legislator Flagler Mitchell.
Thank you, Chairman. Through you, Chair. The 2015 objective for the Community Development Division on page 214 of the 2015 budget include complete 21 public works and facility projects and participating in towns and villages. The 2015 accomplishments on page 209 of the 2016 budget states only 19 projects were completed. What prevented the Community Development Division from achieving its 2015 objectives?
Through the chairman, these projects start at various times throughout the year. So those projects that start early in the year obviously will be completed hopefully by the end of the year. Projects that start mid-year or later often carry over into the next fiscal year and are not reported as completed. So again, we're doing estimates of our best guess as to the projects that will be finished. There are a lot of reasons why they don't stay on their initial schedule, but they do eventually reach completion, I'd say predominantly within a 2-year time frame. So
through you, Chair. So there, for 19, two more projects need to be done. They're going to be added to this year's budget, or they're already being completed?
Through the chair, they continue. There's no restart on them. They continue till they're finished, and the accounting is for that fiscal year. So if we were going to look back at that year, we would be counting those projects. So there is a lag sometimes in completion.
Any further questions? Legislator Lightfoot, you realize you're ruining my average of time my committee meetings last.
I'm helping you out. I'm on your side.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hear the administration tell us earlier in his presentation, Mr. Franklin, that personnel services there was going to be a personnel cut by a 1.5. I don't know if I heard that. Question to you, through you, Mr. Chairman. Personnel services funding is going down by about $37,000. Being cut.
Mr. Chairman, there are no actual personnel layoffs.
Okay.
Further questions?
I was just getting a little confused in that. Thank you for that answer. Mr. Chairman, if I may, just one more.
Continue.
Mr. Chairman, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the administration, can you tell me why there's such a large drop in contractual services from $6,900 to $350? I find this on page 216.
Through the chair, I believe that is accounted for in the Workforce Development Division. We took out the travel budget since it wasn't being used.
Thank you so much.
Legislator Flagler Mitchell.
Through you, Chair. What is the criteria of becoming an authorized agency?
Mr. Chairman, although I believe that is indicated in the budget book, I'm going to request some time that I can give you we have written criteria. So rather than guess in this meeting, let me follow up.
And can you also, through you, Chair, can you also give us a list of events that receive funding from the Sports Development Corporation for 2015?
Mr. Chairman, we can do that.
Thank you.
Legislator Lightfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 214, the excess cost of economic development activity in the planning department over the contribution made by Comida and the Monroe County Industrial Development Corporation in 2016 is $134,602. So my question is, why haven't we increased the contributions for them to cover this $134.62, $134,602?
Excuse me, through the chairman, the funding levels from both the Comida and the Industrial Development Corporation have increased over the years. They've been fairly flat, I'd say, for the past 3 years. There didn't seem to be the need to seek additional funding from them. We believe it's appropriate for the county to allocate some funds towards, obviously, the economic development activities. We think there's a good balance right at the present time.
I think it's a good balance. Thank you so much.
Legislator Flagler Mitchell.
Fleet maintenance charge on page 478 for the charges planning and development was $3,009. Does someone in the department have an assigned county car?
Through the chair, yes, the Director of Planning and Development does have an assigned car.
And through you, say that again, who is it?
It's the Director of Planning and Development.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? There being none, I want to thank Mr. Johnson and Mr. Franklin for their expertise in this area. We'll move on. The next item on the agenda is new business. Mr. Clerk.
I propose I make a motion to move the agenda, move these 4 items.
Any discussion? Being no discussion, we'll move to vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. The agenda is passed. Are there any other matters to come before the committee? There be no other matters. The November 16th, 2015 meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee will be announced.